David Smith here with yet one more flipped classroom math lesson. 3 tips before we start. First, you can adjust the playback speed to suit you. You can also pause a video at any point and jot down notes or write down questions for our next class. Lastly, you can turn on the captions and read my words on the screen. Today's topic covers interpreting cumulative frequency curves. So we can actually use these curves to find some of the values we've been hunting for a long time now by using the curve on the graph. So you might recognize this is the graph that we developed a couple lessons ago. It's the cumulative frequency for the number of visitors. Actually, it was in our last lesson. These are the numbers of visitors and the frequency of those visitors. And we had classes based on 50 visitors per day. So this point was, we had, that's the data point for 50 visitors per day, and we had something like 20 or 16 days where we had 50 visitors per day, and so on. And so these are the data points that we figured out in the last lesson, and we actually made this cumulative frequency curve. So now we're going to use that to figure some things out about our data. Okay, so first one, median. That's pretty easy to get from our curve because the median is the middle value, right? So that's halfway through. We have 200 values total because that's our cumulative total of frequencies. So the median is the middle, so that's going to be at 100. So we can read that right off the graph. We can just go shooting right over, and then down, 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 and that's 127 approximately. So our median is approximately 127. So we got that right off the curve. So you might see some problems in your textbook that just give you a curve, and they're going to ask you to figure out what the median is. All right, so now let's figure out a few other things that we're used to looking up. The lower and the upper quartile. These are pretty easily gotten right from the graph, just like we did the median. The lower quartile occurs in the middle of the first half of the data. So for our data, here's the first half. So the middle is just going to be the 50. So we're going to go right across here, dot, 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 and then down. And this is 77. So that's quartile 1. Now, pardon my graph. It's not super accurate. So I know from my note copy, it's pretty good that ends up being, you read that right down there at 77. So we're going to put approximately 77. And you remember why these are approximate and not exact. I mean, the graph automatically makes it approximate just because we're reading off of a graph. But there's another reason for why they're approximate. Remember, our data points for our classes of visits, we use a midpoint for that. So we don't actually use the actual data. We're creating a frequency table based on making a midpoint. So that's why these are always going to be approximations. Okay, let's do the upper quartile. Actually, I'm going to say pause the video, use your graph, and find the upper quartile. All right, when I read it off the graph, I get 207 for my upper quartile. Let's take a look at the graph. Now the middle of the second half is the middle of 100 to 200 in our frequencies. So we go across on the 50 and we zip on down, and I get approximately 207 for that one. All right, let's take a look at a percentile. This one is going to ask us to find the 90th percentile. So let's talk about what a percentile means first, and then we'll do it on the graph. So the 90th percentile is going to be the number of visitors that includes 90% of our data. Okay, so that's the number at which we've received 90% of our data. So in our case here, it's going to happen at 180 because we go all the way to 200. So 180 is 90% of the way to 200. So I'm going to go ahead and trace that on the graph, and we'll read it right there. All right, so I traced that off on my graph here. I'm going from the 180, which is 90% of 200, go horizontally across and then down, and I get approximately 277. So that's our 90th percentile. So what that means is that 277 visitors per day, that when you get up to that mark, you've encompassed 90% of all of your data. All right, let's do this one more time for good practice. So here I've got another cumulative frequency diagram with wins as my data point, and the frequency here is up to 40. And what I want you to do now is find, using the graph, find your median, your lower quartile, your Q1, your upper quartile, your Q3, and let's find that 90th percentile again. So go ahead, you probably want to copy this into your notes, and then go ahead and see if you can draw those quartiles on there, and the median and the 90th percentile, and figure out what they are. All right, so my median is going to occur at the halfway point, so that's at 20 in my frequencies, and I just shoot that straight across, and I come on down, and on my graph I get about 11.3 for my median, so we can go ahead and put that there. Now go ahead and do the quartiles, do the lower quartile and the upper quartile. Okay, I traced my lines. My lower quartile comes halfway between the halfway, the median, and the 0. So that's at 10 for my cumulative frequency. I zip across, come down. On my graph, I get about 7.2 is what I put there. And then my upper quartile, or my Q3, again, now I'm halfway between the second half of the data, so that's at my 30 cumulative frequency. Drop on down to my graph, and I get about 14.2. Again, about as accurate as I can do with my hand graph. And I got 14.2. Okay. Pause the video and trace out your 90th percentile. Okay, let's take a look at how you did on that. Now this is a little bit more tricky. Where is the 90th percentile, right? I mean, the other one was pretty easy because we went all the way up to 200, so 90 percentile is just going to be 180 on that. It's pretty simple. But this one, 40 is 100%. So what I did here is a pretty simple calculation. I just did 40 times 0.9. 0.9 is 90%, so 0.9 times 40 gives me 36. So that tells me that my 90th percentile occurs at my cumulative frequency of 36. So then I just traced across with that one, and I got my 90th percentile of 17.7, which I put right there. Now that you've watched the video, take a moment to write down some notes or questions or a short summary of the lesson. You can also re-watch portions of the video that you didn't get so well the first time. If you enjoyed the video, please click like. If you'd like to help me grow my YouTube channel, please click subscribe.